Good morning to you all. It's great to be with you once again. I think we have two new people here, Dan and John. Is that right?
Yeah.
Pablo, God bless you all. It's great to meet you, and great to see the others once again. So we're in talk number 2. Since we did one last night, that's how we progressed here. Now, as we remember the general theme, which is behold the bridegroom comes. Now we kind of progress from that personal, pastoral dimension of things. On the one hand, us being prepared personally, and then I kind of applied it from a pastoral point of view as a clergyman. Let's go to this second reading. The talk, washing of the feet, servant leadership, and forming Christ-centered leaders. So again, the overall theme is a healthy parish, building a healthy parish. You get approaches from several different perspectives and points of view. And you know, there are definitely some real practical ways that we can approach it. And I chose, after speaking with Father Seraphin, to approach it relationally. And the practical, not that those practical aspects of how to, you know, the programmatic aspects of having a healthy parish are not important. They're very important. But the foundation of all of them is relational. And the relational part of it begins with God's love for us and our response to that, and then our love for one another. So with that in mind, let's go to this next part. It focuses on leadership. But when we focus on leadership, we could think of the leadership on the one hand within the context of the church, clergy and lay leadership in the context of a parish. But we can think of our own personal leadership in our little worlds in which we live. So think of it from either perspective and point of view. So, I'm going to read John 13, 1 through 17. Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come, and that he should depart from the world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. And supper being ended, the devil having already put it into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, rose from supper and laid aside his garments, took a towel and girded himself. After that he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel with which he was girded. Then he came to Simon Peter, and Peter said to him, Lord, are you washing my feet? Jesus answered and said to him, what I'm doing you do not understand now, but you will know after this. Peter said to him, you shall never wash my feet. Jesus answered him, if I do not wash you, you have no part with me. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. Jesus said to him, he who is bathed needs only to wash his feet, but is completely clean. And you are all clean, but not all of you. For he knew who would betray him, therefore he said, you are not all clean. So when he had washed their feet, taken his garments, and sat down again, he said to them, do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you say, well, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you. Most assuredly I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is he who is sent greater than he who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. Here is our icon for this talk. It's one of my most favorite icons. I use it in leadership training. We, in our tradition, in our jurisdiction rather, we, before the beginning of every year when we have parish council elections, we are responsible clergy to have kind of a seminar for our clergy, for our lay delegates for the positions of parish council. Okay? And so with that in mind, I use this all the time. And I use it in premarital counseling too. And I'm going to get to that in the context of this talk a little bit as well. Okay. Look at this icon. What is Jesus' posture in this icon? He's bowing down. Where are most of the disciples in relationship to him?
Sitting above him.
Excuse me?
Sitting above him.
Above him, right? Okay, he's depicted next to Peter, right? Okay. Is this showing an icon of Jesus submitting himself to the church, to humankind? Is this, you see a submission element here? Is this an icon of Jesus loving the church? We have a new paradigm in Christ Jesus. And the paradigm is leading by serving. Interestingly, years ago, I was still a priest in Houston, Texas. We had a young adult retreat, a ski retreat for our diocese. And then Bishop Isaiah, he was bishop, he wasn't metropolitan at the time, came to the retreat. He was the main speaker. I was a speaker too. And for my part, I used a cyclone with young adults. But I asked him if he would wash their feet. And he said, I'm not going to wash their feet. I said, well, will you pretend like you wash their feet? And he said yes. So we got 12 young adults. And we put them on a table. And then we got His Grace at the time to have a wash basin and a towel. And he bent over. And we just that's what he did basically. And so I don't know, there might have been 100 young adults there. Can you imagine, just to visualize that? Mm-hmm. Their bishop was bowing down to lead them. This is the paradigm of Jesus Christ, which is such an antithesis of the way we approach leadership in the worldly, from a worldly perspective. Am I right? Mm-hmm. Okay. He who would be my disciple, let him follow me. Okay. There you have it, dear people. There you have it. You want to be a leader? Here is your example. Okay, so let's, in the kind of same manner in which we approached yesterday, let's look at that personally, and then we can kind of go forward. I'm gonna put it in the context in a moment of marriage. Okay, but let's look at it very, very personally in our lives. Actually, let me do marriage first, because a parish is called to be a family. It's not coincidence that we, the three of us, are called Father. Okay? Now, of course, we know the scriptural passage where Jesus says, don't call anybody your father. Of course, our Protestant brothers and sisters focus on that a lot. Nobody should be called Father. They don't read necessarily the rest of the context. Nobody should be called teacher. You know, there's other words in there that we call other people as well. But the idea, and this is a reminder to us, or to our bishops, that there's only really one Father. And that is our Father in heaven. And there's only one priesthood. And that's the priesthood after the order of Melchizedek. That's Jesus' priesthood. It's not ours. It's not ours. It's His. And so that's always a reminder to us that it's time for us to decrease so that He can increase. Nevertheless, we are called fathers because the familial dimension of relationship is foundational to human existence. May I repeat that? The familial aspect of relationship is foundational to human existence. Without it, we don't have humanity. So, let's look at this. Let's look at this in the context of marriage. And I told you I'd use this in premarital counseling. Is everybody familiar with the epistle reading from the wedding service? Yeah, I'm going to paraphrase it. It's from Ephesians chapter 5. Actually, let me read it. I want you to see this.
You want me to get the music?
Yeah, great. What do you guys hold this up? Be a human scale. Okay. That's good. It's Ephesians chapter 5, verses 20 to 33. Now, we're going to look at this. When you listen to this in the context of marriage, which it specifically refers to, but don't limit it to that. Listen to it in the context of our relationship with any human being. Okay? So listen. Giving thanks always for all things to God the Father in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, submitting to one another in fear of God. Now the Greek word is phobos. It can be fear, like you're afraid, but it can also be awe, in the reverence of God. Okay? So we could look at it both ways. Okay? The context of this reading is submit to one another in the awe of God. We're going to find out in a second. It's going to speak specifically to wives and to husbands in that order. Okay. Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is head of the wife as Christ is head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, just as the church is subject to Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. I spend 1 hour on this epistle reading with couples. Okay? And I'm going to confess to you, I've done a lot of weddings over the years. There was one time where, don't share this with my bishop. I changed the epistle reading one time. Out of probably, honestly, 500 weddings. And I'll tell you why. I went through this, every time I go through this, the way I'm going to approach it in a moment, I've had women be okay with it. Okay? The way I express it. Okay? And by the way, I will say this. From my limited perspective, I think a lot of Christians get this wrong. Okay. The particular situation was that the woman that was going to be married, who I really didn't know before we did the premarital counseling, had been severely abused. And even in the context of that which I express and share with you, she couldn't get over that abuse. So I replaced this with 1 Corinthians 13. Okay? Now, at this point, as I'm the Chancellor of the Metropolis, I probably would ask my bishop for that permission, but I kind of did it on my own. That, I confess. Having said that, wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, just as the church is subject to Christ, so the wives be to their own husbands and everything. So I say, I say to them in this, that sounds really pretty chauvinistic, doesn't it? And in fact, in the late 70s, if I'm not mistaken, Gloria Steinem, who was the head of the feminist movement of the day, said that Paul, who wrote that, was a chauvinist, and Christianity is chauvinistic. Well, the context of that portion is submit to one another out of reverence or in the awe of God. And this first part is saying to the wife that she is to submit to her husband as to the Lord. We're not talking about Lord Byron here. We're talking about the Lord Jesus Christ. And that the husband is head of the wife as Christ is the head of the church. Okay? So, it does say that, but it doesn't stop there. We have to look at it first in the context of that which precedes it and that which follows it. Because that which follows it talks to the husband. Are you with me so far? Okay. It continues. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her, that he might sanctify the cleanser with the washing of water by the word, that he might present her to himself as a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that they should be holy and without blemish. Husbands, love your wives how? As Christ loved the church. What did Jesus do to show his love for the church? He gave his life. He gave his life. He didn't just give it at the end of his 3 years of public ministry. He gave it daily. He gave it daily to his disciples. And so, guys, you want to be the head? This is the way you lead. This is the way you lead. Okay? Again, not everybody here is married, so don't only look at it from a marriage point of view. Look at it generally from a perspective of relationships. Okay. Essentially, this paradigm this paradigm is life. And it says relationships do not begin up here, relating downward, nor do they even begin here. The beginning point of relationships is here. Furthermore, submission and agape unconditional love are like synonyms in the context of Jesus Christ. So, if you will, a healthy, godly Christian marriage is one that begins, according to this reading, with the husband here building up his wife. And just as Jesus says, I'm giving you an example, do as I've done, there's a reciprocation. And it's all not first and primarily for the sake of the other. It's first and primarily as an offering to God. And that's important in marriage, but at every level of relationship. Because if my wife Marcia was here and I said this, what I'm going to say, which is that I would say, this is what I'm going to say it. We will have been married 48 years this June. 48 years this year. And I'm sure over those many years, there's been beautiful things that I've done for my wife. And then I have annoyed her significantly at other times. What I would say is, on occasion, she has annoyed me as well, if she was here. In any case, when things are going really well, at any relationship level, the most intimate, potentially, of which is marriage, this is easy. When things are not going well, it's not. Our tendency when things are not going well is to go not even here, but here. To take control. When we feel out of control, we take control. This is psychologically true at every level of relationship, right? When we feel out of control or things are not going well, we take control. And that's our tendency. That's our human tendency in the fallen state of humankind. And so Jesus again gives us this paradigm. This is a reconciliation of human nature to God. The true human nature, allowing us to be who we are created to be. But it's not easy. Okay? So, leadership in the church has a call from Jesus Christ himself to do that. Whether it's this leadership or this leadership. Leadership in home, the home, has that same call. Leadership at every level, and I'm going to read a couple of things I've got here. In the movement of this retreat, we now turn from the bride personally and pastorally to the bride as a parish family, learning the way of Christ. This talk is for leaders, and it is also for every parishioner, because in the church, everyone influences someone. For in life, everyone influences someone. We're having the Super Bowl tomorrow, right? I don't think I want to watch it because I don't really care who's in it. I don't want New England to win. I'm just telling you that. You had your day. You had your day. But I'm not so crazy about it, about Seattle either. So I'm actually I'm a lifelong Broncos fan. But I've become a Buffalo Bills fan because of Josh Allen, who went to the University of Wyoming, my alma mater. When you only have 500,000 people in the whole state of Wyoming, once in a great while you have something happen. You have an MVP coming through. Anyway, so having said that, how many times look at how athletes influence people. Just for example. And what the great responsibility on one's shoulders is when to one degree or another they are in positions of authority. And this is the paradigm. Okay, there are several categories of saints in the Orthodox Church. Not from an egotistical point of view. How else can we say saint? What other words, when might we use a word or words might we use for saint?
Holy.
A holy one, excellent. A holy one, okay? Does it make sense that the goal of every Christian is to be a holy one? Does that make sense? We could say it a different way. The goal of every Christian, goal of every Orthodox Christian, is to be a saint. Does that make sense? Okay. Not from an egotistical point of view, right? From a humble point of view. What's the greatest, in the categories of saints, the number one number, far outnumbering any other number of the categories of saints, is the category of martyrs. For some of you from beautiful evangelical Christian background, a martyr is a witness. And they're witnessing their faith in our Lord, not so much with the tongue as with their life. And when I was a priest in Houston, I had an assistant priest, Father Spiro Angelopoulos, right from Greece. So I would ask Father Spiro, Father Spiro, how are you doing today? He goes, I'm struggling. So after several days, I said, Father Spiro, why don't you just tell me you're fine? And he went on to teach me a very valuable lesson. In the monastery, when you ask the monk how he's doing, he says, Abonome. Abona means embattled. I am embattled. It's the root in English for the word agony. Life's a struggle. Going back to the Pastor Ed Young of Second Baptist Church, the fellowship of excitement. Christianity, if you really want to be really hit the nuts and bolts, is a fellowship of pain, sorrow, and suffering. Right? I mean, not that joy doesn't come from it. I apologize for doing this, but it's part of my DNA. There's a lot of Greek words that are applicable in what I'm talking about, so I'm using a lot of Greek words. The word for grace in Greek is charis. The word for joy in Greek is chara. So joy comes from the grace of God. And so joy is not necessarily always being giddy and happy. Deep joy is oftentimes mixed with sorrow. And in fact, there's a Greek word for it, harmolipi, joyful sorrow. Joyful sorrow. And so they are intermixed. And so the reality is this: to be a leader at any level in the world in which we live, the fallen world in which we live, involves struggle, and it involves love, and agape love is sacrificial love. Okay? I'm going to just point out a few other things, then we're going to open up for questions. You're doing really nice job. In the second paragraph on that page, on the below, on the top two, the parish becomes radiant when leaders and parishioners learn to serve with humility, purity of intention, and practical mercy. What do you think practical mercy is?
Shoveling somebody's driveway.
Excellent. Shoveling somebody's driveway. Acts of kindness. Welcoming somebody that is new where they feel kindness and respect. Okay? Next page. Orthodox leadership is canonical. Kenosis means an emptying. Self-emptying, modeled on Christ. In the next part, in Fort Washington is not a sentimental moment. It is a revelation of authority in the kingdom. In the church, authority is shown through love, restraint, patience, and a willingness to take a lower place. Again, I share, we did, okay, Houston, I told you last night, the cathedral in Houston, about 1,000 families. We had outgrown our facilities. We were determined in what should we do. City church, we had an opportunity to buy some houses in the neighborhood, take them down and build buildings, or relocate in entirety. We did a 12-month study. In fact, we used a book called 12 Keys to an Effective Church. And there are 6 keys that are very practical and 6 keys that were more spiritual, if you will. And we went through with a group of leaders of this parish, heavy-duty leaders, under my leadership as the pastor. And we recommended, based upon many criteria, that we were going to locate completely to a more epicenter of where our parishioners lived. We could buy property and build probably for less money than we could in purchasing property around and doing what we're going to do here. And it was going to, we would get more property, all that stuff. Have you talked about your church? Okay. Those are tough discussions out there. Well, let me tell you what happened in this one. Some of the great leaders of our parish made this presentation to the General Assembly, and over a period of time, and we had a parish vote. There were probably 900 people that voted at that, and it was soundly defeated. It was defeated like 700 to 220. Okay? Well, the people that made the presentation were heavy-time donors of the parish. Fathers, you know where this was going. I was an easy person to blame for that vote not going through. Okay? So, my job, I'm telling you what happened in the context of this. I'll tell you the story. In the midst of this, I went on a retreat, a personal retreat in upstate New York, New Skeet Monastery, in the middle of winter. I wouldn't recommend that again. It was cold and snow. So I went to New Skeet. I was there for like a week. And Father Lawrence at the time was the abbot of the monastery. And he gave me a penance, because it was very contentious. And he said, number 1, wake up every morning and read the Bible for 30 minutes. Just the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And just repeat them. Be with Jesus, walk with Jesus, be his disciple, hear the sounds, see the sights, smell the smells. Be with Jesus, number 1. Number 2, if there are people that are really negative, you pray for them every day. Okay? By the way, I will tell you this, I had struggled reading the Bible regularly in my life as a priest up at that time. I ebbed and flowed. That's probably right. And not flowed and ebbed, I ebbed and flowed about reading daily. This probably was, I've been here 20, it's approaching 40 years ago, 38 years ago. I read the Bible every day. Once in a while I miss something. I don't read it 30 minutes, and I just read the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. For me, it's 3 chapters a day. I'm not saying this in a proud way. I'm saying it, I need it. I need it. I need to, and there's sometimes I'm more attentive to what I'm reading than other times, honestly. But it's like I begin with Jesus. So when I got back, and after other struggles in the midst of this challenging situation, basically this was the revelation that came to me. My job, the vote took place. My job now is to pastor this parish and to make sure the next steps are done appropriately. Okay? And thank God the cathedral now, they bought property around, they've expanded the church, they've added other facilities as well. They've stayed there and it's worked out well for them. Another parish has started, which really needed to happen in Houston. And we also helped, when I was there, another parish start. So there's 3 Greek Orthodox parishes in the greater Houston area. There need to be about 4 more probably. But in any case, my job was to, if you will, be constant, consistent, loving in the process, which was not an easy process. It honestly, it led to me leaving that parish. Not because they wanted me to after a couple of years, but because I gave my all in the midst of 1,000 family parish. And so it was, for the sake, it was time that we needed as a family to move to a smaller place. So we kicked the damn code up. Okay. From a psychological point of view, servant leadership also heals the urge to control. Many of us lead from anxiety without realizing it. We manage outcomes. I'm a people pleaser, as I told you last night. This is easy for me to do. Okay, I don't like conflict, so it's easy for me to do. Okay? So I always have to ask myself, am I doing it for me, or are we doing it for God? And it's not an easy answer, but there's struggle in that. But it's always, it's to one degree or another, it's about doing everything as an offering to God. Understand? Everything is an offering to God. It's about approaching others. Remember, from the inverse perspective, there was a lady that would come to us every day once in a while in Houston. Again, I bring up Houston a lot because there's a lot of experiences there. And she would ask for help. And our standard procedure was, if people asked for help and they had a need and they were telling the truth, we would help to whatever degree we were able to. We didn't give money. We might buy a ticket to place or put them up for a night. We typically didn't give money to them. We would give them food and sometimes clothing, or sent them someplace and to do things like that. Well, this one lady wasn't telling the truth. She had been in and out. She had issues, and she wasn't telling the truth. And so, just as gently as we could, I said, "I'm sorry, we can't help you this time." Okay. Well, she took it out on our parish in some way, but still, the idea is no matter who that person is, of course, we have to be safe. Believe me, we have to be safe and very, very cautious. I don't know how you are out here, but St. Catherine they have a policeman every Sunday in the parking lot for all the services Well, the cathedral does too, our cathedral does. I don't know what the other churches do, but it is what it is. So we have to be careful, but at the same time, we treat people with respect. Patristic insights. St. John Chrysostom emphasizes the astonishing humility of Christ in washing the disciples' feet, even including Judas, showing the Lord's patience in his desire to win the heart through love rather than force. I'll tell you what, in our day and age, with the politics of our day and age, either here or in the world, that we, because of social media, have access to like that. It's so difficult to do this. Our tendency is to want to take control. And our other tendency is to, if we're in one camp, think we are the good guys in the white hats, and the people in another camp are the bad guys in the black hats, if I can use that terminology. Let me say good and bad rather than put a color to it, honestly. Okay? We're the good guys and they're the bad guys. The truth of the matter is, we have to be vigilant. Remember the reading yesterday? Prayerful and focused on God. Because all people are created good. We're created in God's image. Everyone is created good. But the best of people can do the stupidest of things, including myself, when I fail to be prayerful, vigilant, and focused upon God. Then there are some, look at what Gregory theologian and Maximus the Confessor said. St. Gregory the theologian ties Christ's foot washing to the healing of fallen humanity through humility, saying that Christ shows that humiliation is the best road to exaltation. Or I might say humility is the best road to exaltation, since this is paraphrased. St. Maximus the Confessor teaches that love is not a theory, but a state of the soul that is proven in concrete action, shaping how we treat every person made in God's image. And by the way, just to repeat, that is every person. It's not just, okay, these people are made in God's image, but I don't know about these people. Does everybody hear that clearly? You can read the practical theology. Well, one thing, a couple things. How do I lead when I feel unqualified or wounded? By the way, we're all wounded. By the way, we're all wounded. By the way, we're all wounded. Begin by taking the towel, not the throne. The throne is the world's way. The towel is Jesus' way. You want to call yourself a Christian? Okay. I'm in the on this last page of this. How do we wash feet during parish tension or disagreement? Foot washing does not mean avoiding truth. Okay? And that's tough for me sometimes in being a people pleaser. It means carrying truth without contempt. And for me, that means a vulnerability for me. Oh, I've shared some of my own vulnerabilities to you yesterday and today. All right? For me, that's so important. Because for 46 years, I've stood up in front of people. I've been in the altar in nice robes. Some priests have nicer robes than me. Some as not so nice as me, but in front of everybody. And I preach, and that is a monologue, not a dialogue. But as I have to remind myself, and I say several times in my own sermon, if I'm pointing my finger at you, there's 3 more pointing at me. Because I'm part of the people of God just like everyone else is, according to Father Alexander Schneemann. And this is the priesthood that we are all a part of. This is the royal priesthood. When we get married, going back to marriage for just a moment, when we get married in the Orthodox tradition, we are crowned together, right? And then, parts of Orthodoxy approach that a little differently. In the Greek and kind of Middle Eastern tradition, we usually have the crowns, a laurel wreath with the ribbon, right? In the Slavic tradition, they're real crowns, right? Sometimes heavy ones, right? Which is good because marriage is heavy. But they represent the crowns of martyrdom, but it also represents being king and queen of your own micro kingdom, the kingdom of your home, which in an analogous manner fits so beautifully with the reading of the 5 wise and 5 foolish virgins, the bridegroom and bride. The idea being crowned by Christ to become a new family of the home. It's the church of the home. And so if we can live at home as if it is a church, and this family does, 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 not perfectly, but striving for perfection, by God's grace and our humble response, then as we come together in the church family, that parish is going to be solid. Okay, that's all I'm going to say, unless, let's open up for some questions and any comments. Yes, Paul.
Before we get into questions, I just wanted to touch on the subject word. We don't understand what being subject to each other means. Everyone in England is a subject of the King of England.
For a queen in our case, in the present case. The queen, right?
Past case, they have a king now. Yeah.
No, they have a kid.
Oh. Where have I been?
The queen, there is a queen, but they are subjects of the king.
Isn't that weird? I mean, how long have we had a queen? How long have they had a queen?
60.
How long
No,
did
no,
we have
no.
Queen Elizabeth?
How long before the king?
60 plus years.
Yeah, she was there. Yeah.
But
Pardon me for interrupting.
yes, King Charles now. But what authority does the King of England have over the daily lives of the people in England? Zero.
He's a figurehead.
It is a legality, not authority. One of the comments that I heard was that for Americans, that passage in Ephesians should use the word allegiance rather than subject.
Well, what I will say though, the Greek is hypotasome, and it is to be below another. That's literally what it means. It's like hippopotamus. Potami is a river, and the hippopotamus is the horse of a river, but hippo it references a horse, but it's below the hippo means below.
Right.
Below is the horse below the river. So the hippopotamus. So hippotasome means to be below another as an offering to Christ.
Yeah.
So I will say that then. And by the way, please, anytime fathers and deacon, if you would like to add anything, please feel free to do so. Okay, thank you. So we have a king now in England?
We don't have a king.
Our sweet Lord Jesus. Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Come on, folks, this is your opportunity.
Yes, Father.
Why would the bishop not want to wash feet?
I mean,
He's a Marine. I mean,
no,
come on.
I said literally, I mean, let's have the kids take off their shoes and stuff. I don't want to do that stuff, so, well, he did it figuratively, okay? And I give him all the credit in the world. Anyway.
Is that normally done in parishes?
Oh, we don't do that in the GOA. We don't, you mean on the Holy Thursday?
Yeah.
Oh, we don't do it, no. You know, it's just, we understand it's basic, our patriarch does it. But we don't do it from parish to parish. That's a good question. We do not do it.
Yeah. We are actually encouraged to do it. I just haven't had 12 men who could come on Thursday afternoon.
Was it?
Why would it have to be men?
Yeah, exactly.
Why is
Because
it not followers of Christ? In Christ there's neither female nor male.
because he didn't wash the feet of Mary Magdalene and the others. He washed the feet of the 12 disciples. And that is the scripture. And that is what we follow.
Father Stephen wiggle his way out of this.
No, there are OCA parishes that do both men and women. Talk to Metropolitan Saba.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I might have one.
Yes. Does that mean yes or yeah?
Yes, I have one.
Let me know when.
Under the section, what if service tends to lead to burnout? I'm curious how one, I don't know if this is a silly question, but discerns between what is the feeling of true burnout and what is simply the sense of growing pains in the spiritual life.
This is a good question. Okay. Well, there's a couple of things that you know what you bring these up and in the practical theology. What if service turns into resentment because I feel unseen? Okay. Name the pain honestly. Resentment often reveals that we are serving to receive something. Appreciation, control, or security. Bring this to Christ. Talk about it. I think it's exposing that. These are real things, guys. Remember, we're talking about being a parish family. I can't believe how many things come from Houston in my mind. When I was going to leave Houston, I knew about 2 or 3 months beforehand, which was very unusual, but a real blessing, because I had a chance to say goodbye to everybody and to have closure. In the midst of the closure, there were a couple of women, younger women that I really didn't know very well, who really had an extraordinarily negative response to me leaving. And when I looked into it a little bit more deeply, I realized that when they were young children, their fathers and mothers got divorced. And they felt that feeling of abandonment come up again. And it made me realize the power in our tradition of calling the pastor father. That could either be positive or negative, right? And it gets back to the family dimension. And it gets back to real relationships. You know, we're not called doctor or reverend. We're called Father. And it's all about the intimacy of relationship. And so the very things that we're talking about, resentments and things, these happen in our families. They happen in our families, you know, the very things we're talking about. Burnout. My wife, President Marcia, and I her parents have lived with us for 9 years. Her father passed away over a year ago with Alzheimer's. Her mother's still living with us at 95. We kind of have caregiver burnout, honestly. You know? And you remember the old commercial, Calgon, Take Me Away? It was like a one-way ticket to Hawaii.
Yeah.
Marcia, you can stay here for a while, I'm going to Hawaii.
Yeah.
So you get burnout. Okay. And the reality is, it's difficult because sometimes we find people in our parishes that really do a good job. And so it doesn't seem like it happens to replace them. That's one aspect of it. And then there's sometimes that people get in positions and they're not going to give up that job until the second coming of Jesus Christ. So these are things that you have to struggle with honestly, not easy, and kind of find ways to deal with them. They're not easy. I don't know if that's answering your question.
That's good.
Okay.
Other.
Yes, ma'am.
How can we, as a smaller parish as a whole, knowing like if we rotate through coffee hour rotations quicker, everyone's doing things more often. I mean, to TJ's point, like everyone's asked to do a lot. So how as we're asked to be servant leaders and take care of this second home, not burn out, not feel resentment, be servants of this space and not want to leave because of all of the human feelings.
That's a great question.
Because we're not 10,000 people.
And you know, there's the large parishes that do it well find a way to rotate. But honestly, a lot of the large parishes, relatively speaking, have a small number of people that do this thing,
Yeah.
right? And again, some of those people are the ones that I hear the second coming of Jesus is coming in the 22nd century. I will continue to do this until then. Even though their heart oftentimes is not in it, but they just feel I can't give up. So those are, honestly, you know, this is where when you have certain things that come from the outside world, this is not unusual in other places too, in schools, in other areas of jobs, or in corporations. And so they have annual reviews. So having a leadership review. Okay. What do they call the 360 review? Okay. So there are people in your parishes, even in small parishes, that have that experience to find ways that we can incorporate those, utilizing the talents and the education that is outside of our church to kind of come up with criteria that, even in the midst of a small parish, the criteria that in a balanced way kind of help you deal with those types of things. Not easy. And a lot of times our churches, I mean, hopefully I'm not speaking against something you would say, father, or deacon. Or most importantly, your wives.
Taking notes.
It's about growth. Part of it comes with opening your doors, your hearts to other people who are willing to come in. And then, systematically coming up with things where you can involve them. Not take them from here to put them up here right away, but, small things where they can kind of come in and help. But that takes organization. And that takes intention focus. And that can be done with your lay leadership, your parish councils and whatever, if you have that kind of a mindset. Father, yes.
No, I had 2 different parish council presidents / chairman in 2 different parishes who saw it as their responsibility to make sure that the priest, to put it nicely, did not exceed his boundaries.
Well, we can get into some touchy things about that. Okay, so I'll tell you the way that I have approached this, and my brothers, please correct me if you think I'm wrong. But I'm about ready to retire from my position, so I really don't care about it. Anyway, I've always looked at the relationship in general between clergy and laity as a marriage. A marriage. And specifically priest and parish council. And that the priest have your arms. By virtue of the specific role that we have, this is the priest. By virtue of the specific role, this is the laity. Okay? And so the leadership, the priest is the head of a parish, according to the Orthodox understanding. This is the way he leads. Okay? And then the parish council and the parish leadership and the parish in general reciprocates. All right? And so there's a check and balance. If you're going to have a happy marriage or a healthy marriage, I'm going to use the word joyful, because there's pain and sorrow in joyful. Okay? If you're going to have a joyful marriage, a healthy marriage, there's going to be a check and balance. And the truth of the matter is this. I'll go back to experience in Amarillo, Texas, small parish. Again, probably similar to your size. As soon as we got there, within months, Presbytera Marcia became pregnant with her second child, Christopher. I didn't say anything about that. Yeah, no. Sometimes as we get older, we repeat. I didn't mean to look at you. She got pregnant, but was in bed for 5 months of her 7th month pregnancy. Oh, Christopher was 2 months born, 2 months premature, after significant issues. Here I was, in my late 20s, full of energy. Had just served an inner city parish in New York. Come to this parish, I wanted, ready to go, right? And I'm basically staying at home a lot, taking care of my wife, because we had a little 2-year-old daughter. All right? That parish rallied to care for us. And it was a great lesson for me to be on the receiving end. Okay, I'm going to say something else about relationships in general, marriages in particular, and relationships in general, marriages and parishes. Our tendency, usually we in relationships, let's talk about marriage. One is more apt to serving and the other is more apt to being served. That make sense? The old country attitudes, you know, the guy is going to be served and the woman is going to be the server, right? Right? Okay? All right. It behooves, in the context of Jesus Christ and his paradigm, it behooves everybody in any relationship, marriage, relationships in general, parishes, to take turns. Okay? So think of this. Since I'm Greek and I have Greek yaya, grandmother, the old model, we're going over to dinner. Yaya is going to fix dinner, she's going to do everything. Basically, you sit down and she waits on you. I wish my wife could hear some of this.
We are recording.
Oh, you are recording. No, the reality is, that's the old model, okay? And basically, the guy sits up here and he's taking care of it. Right? Okay, that's not Jesus' model. That's not Jesus Christ's model. That's a worldly model. Furthermore, as I mentioned in the marriage, this is the husband. Well, let's just look at us, all of us, male, female, I don't care who we are. The beginning point of relationship is here. Okay? And if I'm serving, it behooves in an honest relationship for this person to say to this person, you know, I've been serving you for a while. Now would you please serve me? And you take turns. Okay. Do you remember Scott, some of you, remember an author by the name of Scott Peck? Road Less Traveled? Road Less Traveled? He gave a definition for love in the Road Less, he's a psychiatrist. He wrote a few books, powerful books. Road Less Traveled, People of the Lie, A Different Drummer, that all come to my mind. A Different Drummer is about, it's about community building. It's a really good book. I mean, this is 30-some years ago. But it's about community building. I'm going to say that in the context of what we're talking about. He said that there's levels of true community. And step one is pseudo-community, when you realize you're not quite there. After you identify your pseudo-community, step two is chaos. Step three is emptiness. And step four is true community. Okay? All right. Anyway, put that out. That can be in relationships too. In any case, so he writes this book and he gives a definition for love. Love is wanting the best and working for the best in another. Wanting the best and working for the best in another. According to that definition, I would say if this person is constantly serving, they are not loving this person, according to that definition. Wanting the best and working for the best in another. Why would I say that?
Because being served all the time robs you of following Christ.
Being served all the time robs you of following Christ. Does that make sense? Being served all the time robs you of following Christ. To follow Christ means to serve. Now, conversely, there are plenty of people who control by serving. Does that make sense? Plenty of people who control by serving. Going back to my Greek yaya, not my personal one, but just the you know, a stereotypical. You're going to go over to eat at her house, and she, yaya, let us help you. Let us help you. No, no, honey, I can do it all. Honey, I can do it. And she's going, let us help. No, no, I can do it. And, you know, she's playing a martyr.
Yeah.
Okay? But she does everything. She controls by doing everything. So this person needs to learn how to graciously receive. And so, in either case, in both cases, taking turns as an offering to God. And that can be appropriated at every level of relationship, even in a parish family. You were going to ask a question.
I don't know, I was coming from point of view of, being invisible. And what if you want to be invisible, and at the same time those women say that you're not dressed right, and you don't cross yourself right, and you don't bow right, and all that. How do you deal with it? I guess without.
In the words of my first pastor that I was an assistant under, Father Angelo Gavella's of blessed memory, better you than me. These are tough things that have to do with, relationships in a community, relationships in a family. So, and look at where we are in this part of the country in Orthodoxy. I don't really care what jurisdiction we're in, generally speaking. I mean, how many people have chosen to come into Orthodoxy, converted, chosen to come into Orthodoxy? And most of you are part of this parish, right? Okay. Okay, so look at the dynamics. So I'll speak of St. Catherine Parish. Well, I was there for 3.5 years. So St. Catherine Parish started as a breakoff of the cathedral, and there were primarily Greek American families that started that. Having said that, there were a handful of Greek immigrants that were part of the starting of that. And then in the time that I was there, we started to be open to other people of different ethnic Orthodox backgrounds, but then many people chose to become Orthodox. And I was noticing that sometimes, after the catechism classes, the people would there was a group of people who had chosen to become Orthodox, and they kind of became a little community unto themselves. Right? So I intentionally started to try to integrate them into more established Orthodox group families, or godparents choosing somebody that's Orthodox for a long time, and kind of started to try to integrate them into those families for a few reasons. One of which was so that they could become a part of that, and so some of those attitudes of the past that you're talking about, they could get to know the people, and so that the old ethnic ladies primarily.
Yeah.
Primarily ladies. Yeah, am I wrong? I'm just saying. But it could be men too. Would get to know them, because those people are really loving and caring people most of the time, as long as they know you. But if they don't know you, that's when the judgmental stuff comes out. Okay? Is that? And so to try to integrate them, because we're talking about a family now, find the ways, this is a struggle as well, find a way to do that. And then the second part of doing it is that you can learn a lot about Orthodoxy by reading, but the living of Orthodoxy is something that takes time. So just kind of have that, kind of become a part of who we are, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? And so connecting with those families too. I don't know how you do it here. You guys can talk about some of these things when you're in the group 4. You could talk about these things, and then we can share them. We'll have an opportunity for 30 minutes or so to share as a spokesperson. But does that kind of answer your question?
I guess when you're established in a faith, you could stand up for yourself. But I had several of the people that I knew who just came and got this, we call them church witches at the time. That's the name we gave them.
Is that a W or a B?
It's
Is this being live streamed?
People did leave if you don't feel. I mean, in my case,
Okay.
what happened is I personally was attacked, but I was attacked in Russian, and my husband doesn't speak Russian, so the only reason I did not leave is because he didn't know what it was all about.
Okay, we're going to talk, the next session is going to deal with hospitality. So we're going to talk about that, okay? Yes. All right, any other comments? Yes, sir.
I'm curious about
your first name again? Yeah.
I'm curious about the word lead or leader in Greek, like the meaning of that. I'm thinking when I think about the Gospels, the only time I remember the word being used, at least in English, is leaders of like the Sanhedrin, leaders of the Pharisees. Right? It's not like Jesus never talks about leadership in that word, right? Although you'll hear St. Paul will talk about those who lead, leaders of the apostles. We use that terminology, but when the Gospels itself, I'm just curious about the word.
I'll think of if you can come up with, the words that are used in the scriptures that I can remember. Leader is not specifically used. It's presbyter is used, okay? Presbyteros, which means the first one, basically. The disciple, so mathetes, and apostle, apostoli. So those words are used. Can you think of
Archi.
What?
Archi.
Archi, yeah. Okay, so they're kind of archi, yeah. So the beginners. It is literally what that means, kind of the positions of leadership. Okay. So there were appointed leaders, but those appointed leaders, very practically speaking, had others to help them.
Yeah,
And some of them were appointed as, and ordained, if you will, but others were not.
no, but to Dan's point, I think the Archi are never the Christians.
Are never
Christians.
liturgical.
They're never Christians.
Oh. I'd have to look.
Isn't there leadership implied in the term rabbi?
Yeah, which is the teacher, basically.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
again-
But he's talking about after Jesus, the epistles, Acts of the Apostles and the epistles, I think.
The word, like leader, like those who lead, that's not really in the gospel accounts, that concept, right? You have apostles, you have disciples, you have
Can you think of
rabbi,
anything, Dan,
you have
from
teacher.
that point of view?
I'm just, it's interesting to me,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, I think everything flowed to the apostles. Okay? Through the 12, and then we get, after Judas hangs himself, having Matthias, then Paul, and then the 70. So that was the group. But there were women that were part of that. They're not necessarily part of the 70, but Mary Magdalene, for example, and there were others that were part of that.
I'm just thinking sometimes we just look at leaders, like leader as a function versus the function of an apostle, the function of a disciple, the function of a rabbi, the function of, there's to a specific work, to a specific thing.
Well, he does talk about, in 1 Corinthians 12, some are called to be apostles, some are called to be teachers, some are called to be administrators. So these were not all ordained, so to speak, through the laying on of hands, but they were what we would, I assume, as lay people too. What you think, fathers?
To be part of the parish council, you were ordained to it.
Okay.
Men and women. I mean, that was the diaconia.
Okay, that's another thing. So that's ministers.
And that's what I was wondering is, like the hospitality part, which is the next part, is that more the diaconia versus this part, the leadership of the church?
Good questions.
And Dan, is part of the, maybe kind of what you're getting at is the emphasis of leadership in our contemporary moment. Like it seems like it's much more of a modern emphasis on leadership and being a leader that doesn't seem to be as prominent or highlighted in the scriptures in that in the
Right.
kind of way that we do today, because it's about business, it's about being a CEO.
Kind of, yes. Yeah.
At least that's kind of
I'm trying to understand the meaning of that concept in the scriptures. I mean, you do see it, right?
Yeah.
St. Paul alludes to it, but in the gospel accounts it.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, without a doubt, I mean, the Orthodox history is, the general leadership is the episcopos, the overseer, and the presbyters, and then the ministers and deacons. Okay, and there were women deacons too. And the women deacons generally have the role of taking care of women and the needs of women, taking the sacraments to them, etc. Okay. Having said all, and accompanying them when they're going to be baptized, taking them, being with them as they're going to confession, those types of things. So these were literally ordained, I guess, right? And so I think the concept that we have today is different than the history of the church. I still have, having said that though, there had to be people that were part of the people of God that were not appointed specifically for that, because look at the Roman church, basically, the Western part of the church, it developed to where everyone that did everything was either ordained or monastic. That didn't happen in the Eastern church. I don't think. But. Why don't we take a break here? We're a little late on the break part. Let's take a break for, we'll start at 5 after, so the 15-minute break, okay?